Alright, so in this video, I want to go over something that comes up quite often when I speak with homeowners, which is that let's say they've spoken with multiple companies, they've been looking around to get help with possibly installing panels and batteries for their home. Oftentimes they know they want to get it, but they just trying to find what feels like the best option to go with. And so we let's say you've already done that, you've spoken with multiple companies, you've gotten multiple quotes, and you are trying to figure out how to proceed. So I guess what would your, like, obviously besides the price, I guess how would you decide what to do? Because some people we speak with, they just decide based on, they look at the quotes and they pick something that seems to be able to lower their electricity bills or eliminate them, like the system that's large enough, and they choose a system that's like the lowest price that's large enough to eliminate their electricity bills. Other people, like, they're looking for something that can have more certainty, that has more long-term reliability, and like after sales support that's priced in, and they want to they want to get help from a company that's been around for longer, that has a better overall reputation with minimal complaints. So for you, or I guess, what would you be looking for? So if it helps, I can, in this video, I can make some suggestions about what things to look out for and things to look for. So first of all, yeah, I mean, the intention is just to help people to avoid, like, provide some suggestions about doing, like, having a rigorous due diligence process that you could potentially follow to avoid having a worse experience, and that could potentially cost you much more than getting a good quality system, with a reliable company and with better overall results for the long term. Some people, like, they don't really care about how it looks. Others, like, they care, like, how it fits into the home and adds value to the home. That's just one example. So one thing to check is the reviews, to check for any complaints from customers, because you can always, every company will always have plenty of 5-star and 4-star reviews. That's normal. But the things to pay attention to is the complaints, the 1 to 3-star reviews. So if you go on any common websites that people leave reviews on, like Google Maps, Trustpilot, Product Review, Solar Quotes, just to see what issues and complaints customers have made, and that can include, like, reliability versus having equipment failures and faults, the system underperforming or not performing at all, what the product and installation quality is like, or perhaps issues in those areas, and any issues with the customer support. So often what we see with companies that with people that get cheap system from companies that quote on the cheaper end of the market, is that they call them up when they have an issue and they don't even answer, or their support is lackluster. They say they'll get back to them, they say they'll do something, but they don't. And so that makes the customer frustrated because the issue doesn't get solved. And oftentimes they even have to go to get another company to fix it or replace it, especially if it's not working properly. Or they just have to deal with the issues, which is, we're not talking a short period of time here. It's that the batteries should last for at least 10, 15 years. Another thing to do is to assess installation quality by looking at photos of installations from the company on their website, on social media, Facebook, Instagram, and so forth, and checking to see if there are any non-compliant aspects of the installation. And that can include, but isn't limited to, this is a fairly long list, but are all the cables mechanically protected? For example, are they in conduit to protect from water ingress, and that helps to prevent electrical arcs or fires or corrosion and consequence faults? Is it protected from drilling? For example, if you drill through a wall, is there an internal cable on the other side, or is it protected from like vermin, chewing on the wires, or like adventurous children? Is it protected from? Is the cabling protected from UV exposure, so it will last for the long term? And one thing to note is there must not be more than 300 millimeters of exposed cable from any enclosure, including inverters and switchboard. So I'm just walking through this checklist that I've written up, so I'll share my screen. So, yeah, this is the list. So, are the cables firmly secured? Because sometimes, especially with do-it-yourself installations, the cable just like look like spaghetti dinner, like just dangling all over the place. And that's not just an aesthetic problem. It also is, yeah, if the cables aren't in conduit, if they're not clamped to the wall, then that can cause issues over time that I just mentioned with water ingress and mechanical damage and so forth. So the next point is, does the battery comply with insulation requirements? And that includes, but isn't limited to, things like, is the battery at least 600 millimeters horizontally and 900 millimeters vertically below windows or doors that open to habitable rooms, air conditioners, gas appliances, hot water heat pumps? And gas appliances also includes gas pipes, gas hot water heaters, and any gas appliances. Next point, is the battery mounted securely to the wall or on a solid ground surface, or both? For any battery systems where there's multiple modules, each module should be mounted to the wall, not just like the top but the bottom. So that way it's, because batteries are heavy, and if they're not mounted securely, then it could cause the battery to topple over flat on its face, and obviously that's not going to be good for the battery, and it's not going to be good for the electricity that it provides to you. So if the ground is not solid, then a concrete base should be used instead. So if, for example, if the ground has pebbles, or it's an uneven surface, or there's bare soil, then yeah, a concrete base should be used. So we can provide that. Next one, are there any external isolators? And if so, they should not have a top entry with cables going into the top if they're outside. The reason for that is because it would be a non-compliant if that happened, and because if there's cables coming down through the top, then what can happen is condensation can build up in the cables, and water can drip down if there's any water ingress, and that water can accumulate, go directly into the isolator, and that will cause it a fault, electrical fault, over time. So the cables should enter through the bottom of the isolator to prevent water ingress again, and any bottom entry cables should have a drip loop. So it should go down, loop around, and back up, or have a drain device to remove the water that can build up from condensation. So drain device is probably a better solution, because even with a drip loop, condensation could still build up and still evaporate and then go up into the isolator. Now, labels. This is something that can often get overlooked, and it's very common, but especially, companies with any company that uses subcontractors, the installers can often just whack on like every single label of multiple similar labels that have the same purpose. So it's just like, not only does it not look good, but It's unnecessary, and it can even be non-compliant and confusing for potential people that are doing any maintenance or work on the site, electrical work. So the signage needs to be clear and easy to follow, and oftentimes that can get overlooked. Does the company use tile grinding if you have a tile roof to ensure the integrity of your tile roof? So that's obviously only applicable if the company is going to be installing solar panels, if you're looking to get extra panels or replace the existing ones you have, or if you don't have any panels. And so the way it works is the tiles are taken off. The panels have mounting frames, and they have feet that slide under the tiles. And so the installers will take the tile off, and they will then use a tile grinder, an angle grinder, to grind a slot in the tile under the bottom of the tile that aligns with where the feet of the tile, the panel mounting frames will screw into the battens of the roof. And so, yeah, the feet screw into the batten of the roof, and then they secure the mounting frames so they stay solid and don't move over the lifetime of the 25 years of the system. And so that, because the warranty is 25 years for the panels. So the reason for doing that is so that the feet is flush with the tile, so it's not, the tile isn't like sitting on top of the feet and like it's like it's wonky, and that can cause it to become rattle back and forth and become brittle and break over time because of the wind. And so if the tile breaks and you have water leaking into the tile and into the roof, and that can cause, obviously, mold building up, and that can also be, and the mold can lead to health issues, but not only that, it can cause structural damage with the water. So, and structural damage is obviously very expensive to replace. So this is a big reason why it's not good to try to compromise on price to get a cheaper system, because companies that aren't there are companies out there that have had complaints of roof leaks. So it's very important to avoid that, and I'm sure you understand that. And next point related to that is, if the installers break the tiles, will they repair them right away or replace them? Because if they don't, then that's going to cause roof leaks, right? Even if it's like a week later and you have a rain between then and a week, that's obviously not going to be good. So it's important to make sure that you have a sufficient number of spare tiles on site on installation day, especially if they're terracotta tiles, because they are more fragile. So for if you, let's say 15 panels were being installed, then preferably you'd want to have at least 20 spare tiles. If it's more like 30 panels, like a 13 kilowatt system, then preferably having at least 40 spare tiles would help. Now, our installers are quite careful, so it's probably unlikely that they would break that many tiles. They might not even break any, but it's better to be safe than sorry. Now, have there been, as mentioned, have there been any complaints of roof leaks, broken tiles, or other compliance breaches, or just poor conduct from the installers? Like leaving litter on site is another one. That will also give you a more trained eye if you happen to get a cheap system installed and it leaks, that then you can you don't have to pay full deposit if you're not satisfied with the overall quality. I mean, you pay a deposit before the installation. That's companies will generally require that. But once installation is done, you don't have to. Usually, only maximum 10% deposit is required for any construction projects, and above that, the balance must be paid after installation. And so if you're not satisfied, again, then you don't have to pay. Next point, does the company provide customized detailed proposals with site inspections where they use a measuring tape to assess clearance requirements for potential battery locations? And do they inspect your meter board and your roof? Or do they just use cookie cutter quotes without a site inspection? And a related point is, do they assess your current and future electricity usage, or what your future electricity usage might look like, to determine an appropriate system size to be able to cover your daytime and evening energy consumption? And does that assessment take into account for the battery having at least 70% capacity after 10 years? And do they ask you if you might get an EV to save around $2,800 a year plus more each year over 11 and a half years because of oil prices rising faster than electricity prices? Because that would be how much you would typically save. There's a link here to this Instagram post that cites some data around that. And next point, do they assess how much additional electricity you might use if you got an EV based on how much you drive per week? One sec. So what I often will do is just ask people how much they would drive time-wise, or kilometers per day or per week, and work it out per day, and then punch it into ChatGPT. And so you can see, like, if someone drives an hour a day, then that would roughly use 8 to 15 kilowatt hours per day. And that depends on the speed that they drive and the efficiency of the vehicle. Next point. Does the company do they do a financial assessment comparing the long-term cost of just staying with your current electricity setup, with getting it from the old wooden poles and wires and coal-fired power stations and so forth? Or does that financial assessment, if they do it, does it account for electricity rate increases of about 8% per year over the last 10 years, and 9 to 11% per year from 2022 to 2025? I'll show you something. So this folder here shows what the rate hikes have been. So this data here shows that from 2022, this is data from the Independent Pricing and Regulatory Tribunal. You can find it yourself online from this link here. It's available in the document that I'm just sharing. And then so you can see from 2022 to 2023 that the rates have increased by between 9 to 11%. That's in the Ausgrid network, which is like Eastern Sydney, near the coasts, and Endeavour is like Western Sydney, so it's between 11 to 12%. For more rural networks, it's a 9% increase, like essential energy in rural New South Wales, outside of Sydney. And just a little bit more. So this just shows the rates have doubled from between 2009 and 2023 for from $1,400 annually to $2,800 That's for a home that would use about 6,000 kilowatt hours, which is a little less than the average. This just shows that the rates have increased for one person from about 10 cents per kilowatt hour in 1991 up to around, there's multiple, like 10 different charges, but around 46.1 cents per kilowatt hour when I calculate it in the sidebar here. So it's roughly 461% or 361% increase over 32 years, which works out to be 11% per year, although it's a little bit different when you compound it. Right here. You can pause it and take a look at that more closely if you like. So, next point, does the installation company, before I move on to the next point, so yeah, 4.9% increase over the last 32 years. Oh, I'm not sure if it recorded what I just said. So it's just interesting to note that they've increased by 4.9% over the last 32 years, but they've actually increased by 9 to 11% over the last 4 years. So they've actually been increasing more quickly lately. So the next point to check is like, does the company use equipment with suppliers and manufacturers that all have local Australian offices, or do they import equipment directly? Most companies will use equipment that they get from suppliers, local suppliers, and that where the manufacturer and the supplier have a local office. But here and there, some import equipment directly. And what that means if they're importing directly is that if the company goes out of business, there's no more warranty. That's under Australian consumer law. Okay? So the warranty is only as good as the company staying in business. And now, what are the reviews of the equipment manufacturers like? Do they have many one-star reviews? So it's important to do due diligence on the equipment manufacturers themselves. So again, checking the one-star reviews to see if there's any issues indicating poor reliability, inadequate customer support, etc. So normally you would go to the installation company first point of call if there's any issues. And then they would deal directly with the manufacturer rather than yourself. But if in the hypothetical event that an installation company went out of business, then you would go directly to the supplier or the manufacturer. But if you probably wouldn't even know who the supplier is, so you'd have to go to the manufacturer. Then it's also important to check how long is the installation company and the manufacturer been around for. How many reviews do they have? What's the average star rating? And another metric is how financially stable is the company? And do they have multiple products and revenue streams that would help to make them more stable and less likely to go out of business? So there's some things to check around the manufacturer. Another thing to check is, can the installer book you in very quickly in just a couple of days or weeks? And that might sound like a good thing, but it is a warning sign, because what it means is that they're not that busy. And what that could suggest is that the business isn't that sustainable. And what that means is they may have a higher risk of going out of business and not being able to continue to honor warranties and provide support. Now, on the flip side, if it takes over 3 months to get it installed, then that clearly means that they have bottlenecks with their installers, operation staff, stock issues, or a combination thereof. You obviously, if it takes like 6 months to get installed, obviously that's not good, because you'll have to keep paying for your electricity bills over that time, and you just be facing this uncertainty of, when's it going to get installed? I paid my deposit. Why is it taking so long? That sort of thing. If it takes them too quickly or too long to get installed, it's generally not a good thing. I mean, it might sound good for you if they can get installed quickly, but again, it's a warning sign, because it means that they're not that busy, and so there's business risk around them being able to support you for the long term if they're not making enough money, if they're not busy if they're not keeping that busy. Now, does the company offer additional value add services and products? And this is a long list, but it includes customer support. You might take it, you naturally expect to take it for granted that customer support would be included, but that's not always the case. So it can especially not be the case for companies that are cutting corners on the price to get your business. And so that's one issue that can crop up in the 1-star reviews. Something happens, I think I already mentioned that. Something happens, it goes wrong, and they call them up and they don't even answer the phone, or they're just they're not getting the issue fixed. Next thing, does the company just offer like upfront, are they just trying to get you to pay upfront for it, or do they offer alternatives where you can pay what we call a bill to ownership or a bill swap plan, where there's no upfront costs required, and you can have the ability to have similar or lower monthly expenses for a fixed period while avoiding electricity rate hikes of up to 30% or more each year. So that way the payments each year, your expenses month to month stay the same, while people that don't have panels and batteries, their bills are going up. So, and then after a few years, those payments finish. You own the system outright, and you're not getting any bills anymore. You're getting, oftentimes, what people with help, they're getting their electricity company owing them money instead. So you can find the best green loan on the market with rates as low as 2.79% on this website here. They're called 28 watts. So you can just go to 28watt.com.au. 28 watt. Yeah, that's it. 28watt.com.au. What else? So, does the company recommend or incorporate value-add electricity plans like Amber into their proposals? I mean, this isn't a requirement. It's not essential to switch to a different electricity plan. You could just stay with the current plan that you have. But something I often recommend is to switch to Amber. The reason for that is that they just allow you to save more money on your electricity and make more money exporting it to the grid, because they don't make a profit off of how much electricity you use, and they also don't make a profit off of how much you send back to the grid. They just charge you $25 per month, flat monthly subscription fee, and that's the only money that they make from their customers. So you can learn more on their website, amber.com.au, and I have plenty of information to share about that as well. And what I often do is I put together a report that shows you what the difference would be with being with Amber or staying on your current plan, and how much you would save per year with each option versus not doing anything, just staying with your current electricity setup. How long it would take you to get your money back if you paid up front for it, that sort of thing. Sorry. Next point. Does the company only do solar and battery installations, or can they help to get off gas with electric hot water heat pumps, air conditioners, induction cooktops, and thus avoid more exposure to volatile gas prices? And that they can be especially volatile with increasing geopolitical tensions that cause supply shortages. For example, like what happened with Russia invading Ukraine in 2022 and the consequent sanctions on Russian exports, and currently what's going on in 2026 with oil and gas tankers being blocked in the Strait of Hormuz. Next point, do they offer panel cleaning service? Some people, that can be a value because it can be difficult to get up on the roof if they have a double-story roof, for example, or they're older. Do they offer a monitoring service? And that can be before or after getting the panels and batteries. So that way you can have more. This can be a number of benefits of that. One is to see how much electricity you're using, how much is going to the grid, but that would be included anyway with the battery that you get. But there are monitoring services that are more advanced that allow you to assess, to get any alerts if the system is underperforming. So one of them is called solar analytics. No, it's recording. Next one, do they offer bird mesh? So I'm not sure if it was recording for those points. Do they offer a panel cleaning service? Do they offer a monitoring service or a more advanced one like solar analytics? Um, Next point, do they offer bird mesh? Uh, and that would be recommended if you have any birds that have been known to nest underneath solar panels, such as pigeons, miners, starlings, Indian miners. Next one, do they offer system inspections? After 5 years, just to see if it's performing properly. Do they offer EV chargers, hot water heat pumps, air conditioners, induction cooktops, a catch power multifunctional accessory that just has, it's like kind of like a Swiss Army knife for solar battery systems that allows multiple functions, so you can learn more by going to their website. I don't want to bore you to death with details about that right now, but yeah, you can find plenty of information on their website. But basically, there's a number of functions that it can do, like optimizing. If you have a hot water system, it can make sure the system is it can turn on when the sun is shining, and it can turn off if it's a cloudy day. Finally, the next point, the last point is, well, there's two more points, but this is one that's something people might often consider, but how ethical are the supply chains of the equipment? And this is just politics aside, like it's just stating facts, but Chinese supply chains have been known to, I mean, if you get if you buy anything that comes from China, then, or if their supply chains involved that come from China, with any materials or components that come from China, then what that can cause is funds to go to the Chinese government. And I'm not being racist or anything, but the Chinese government have been involved with human rights abuses against Uyghurs and Tibetans, and they've been quite aggressive in the South China Sea, and they could potentially invade Taiwan. And conversely, while brands that aren't made in China are few and far between, the Tesla Powerwall is made in the USA. There's a few other brands that aren't made in China. It's a mix. So Tindo, they assemble the panels in Australia, but the cells are made in China. Fronius assembles their reserva batteries in Europe, although the battery cells are made in China. REC manufactures their panels in Singapore. So these are premium panels with very low defect rates and are free of toxic lead with their pure R panels. Sonnen manufactures batteries in Germany and the US. They did have a factory in Australia, but it was shut down in South Australia. So there are a few Chinese brands, Aiko, Longi, Jinko, and Trina, which are popular dominant panel brands, and they are made in China. Aiko, we do install at Electrifying Australia. We do install Chinese brands, including Aiko, Jinko, Anko, Sig Energy, Sungrow, Goodwee, and Bluetti. But we also install the Powerwall 3, and we have installed Tindo and REC panels in the past, and we probably could install them again. It would probably, cost a little more because we don't have them in stock, so we would have to place an order for them, and because they are more premium brands, they would cost more for that reason as well. Finally, if you have paid a deposit with a company, and if after doing due diligence with this list, you find that you're not really satisfied with the company, then it is possible to get a refund under Australian consumer law if the system hasn't been installed yet. So in that case, it is worthwhile doing due diligence and potentially cancelling the agreement and asking for a refund if the company doesn't hold up well under due diligence. And let's say they have installed the system, like I mentioned, and let's say you have had a system installed, but there is a serious defect or problem with it, then you may be within your rights to request that defect or problem to be fixed. It just depends on the nature of the issue. Like if it's a minor issue, like with the Wi-Fi not being able to be set up properly because of an issue with the Wi-Fi connection quality, then there may be an extra charge for that, for example, because an issue like that can be outside of the company's control. Uh, so, but if it's like a serious non-compliant installation, then you'd be within your rights to request that to be fixed before paying the full amount. That's the full amount payable, the balance payable. So, in closing, hopefully this video has been helpful. Do feel free to contact me at Electrifying Australia. My name is James Ray. If you have any questions or if you're curious to see how we might be able to help you. All right, take care and stay safe.